Whether a large foyer is considered living space or a hallway when applying the provisions of the National Electrical Code, Section 210.52 for usable wall space, depends on its specific use and design. Several factors should be taken into account. Firstly, consider the purpose and use of the foyer. If the foyer is primarily used as a living space, such as for entertaining or relaxing, it would be considered living space. If it is mainly used as a passageway or entryway, it would be considered a hallway. Secondly, consider the size and configuration. A large foyer that is spacious and open may be considered living space, while a narrow or constricted foyer that functions primarily as a hallway may not. Thirdly, consider the architectural features. Foyers with high ceilings, windows, and built-in furniture or artwork might be more likely to be considered living space. Foyers with plain walls, low ceilings, and no distinctive features might be more likely to be considered hallways. Fourthly, consider local building codes. Some local building codes may define a foyer as either living space or hallway, which can impact the National Electrical Code application. National Electrical Code Section 210.52 requires that there be sufficient usable wall space for the installation of electrical devices in living spaces. The usable wall space is defined as the vertical surface area of the walls within a room that is not obstructed by doors, windows, built-in cabinets, or other fixtures. Now let's consider the application to foyers. If the foyer is considered living space, it must meet the requirements of National Electrical Code Section 210.52 for usable wall space. This means providing enough vertical wall area for switches, outlets, and other electrical devices. If the foyer is considered a hallway, it is not subject to the specific usable wall space requirements of National Electrical Code Section 210.52. However, switches and outlets may still need to be installed in accessible locations for convenience and safety. In conclusion, whether a large foyer is considered living space or a hallway for the purposes of National Electrical Code Section 210.52 depends on its specific use, design, and local building codes. It is important to assess these factors carefully to ensure compliance with electrical safety and building regulations. The National Electrical Code is a comprehensive set of standards that provides guidelines for electrical installations to ensure safety. It is updated regularly to reflect the latest technologies and safety practices. Section 210.52 specifically addresses the placement of receptacles in dwelling units to ensure that occupants have convenient access to power. The requirements vary depending on the area of the dwelling unit. For example, in kitchens, receptacles must be installed along countertops so that no point along the countertop is more than 24 inches or 600 millimeters from a receptacle outlet. This is to prevent the overuse of extension cords, which can be a fire hazard. In living rooms, family rooms, and bedrooms, receptacles must be installed so that no point along the wall line is more than 6 feet or 1.8 meters from a receptacle outlet. This ensures that lamps, appliances, and other electrical devices can be easily plugged in without the need for long extension cords. In hallways, the requirements are less stringent because hallways are typically used for passage rather than as living spaces. However, receptacles may still be required in hallways for convenience and safety. The determination of whether a foyer is considered a living space or a hallway can significantly impact the number and placement of receptacles required by the National Electrical Code. If the foyer is considered a living space, it must meet the receptacle spacing requirements for living rooms, family rooms, and bedrooms. This means that receptacles must be installed so that no point along the wall line is more than 6 feet or 1.8 meters from a receptacle outlet. If the foyer is considered a hallway, it is not subject to these specific receptacle spacing requirements. However, receptacles may still be required for convenience and safety. In addition to the receptacle spacing requirements, the National Electrical Code also specifies requirements for the type of receptacles that must be installed in dwelling units. For example, ground fault circuit interrupter or GFCI protection is required for receptacles in bathrooms, kitchens, and other areas where there is a risk of electric shock. Arc fault circuit interrupter or site protection is required for receptacles in bedrooms to protect against fires caused by arcing faults in electrical cords or appliances. The local building codes may also have additional requirements for receptacles in dwelling units. It is important to check with the local building department to determine the specific requirements that apply in a particular jurisdiction. The interpretation of terms like living space and hallway can sometimes be subjective. It is always best to consult with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer to ensure compliance with the National Electrical Code and local building codes. Proper electrical installation is essential for ensuring the safety of occupants and preventing electrical hazards. When evaluating a foyer to determine if it should be classified as a living space or a hallway for National Electrical Code purposes, several factors need careful consideration beyond the basic definitions. The functionality of the space is paramount. Is the foyer merely a transitional area to move from the entrance to other parts of the building, or does it serve a more significant purpose? If the foyer contains seating areas, tables, or other furnishings that encourage people to linger and use the space for activities typically associated with living areas, it leans towards being classified as living space. The size and proportionality of the foyer relative to the rest of the building are also important. A small, narrow foyer that barely accommodates passage is more likely to be considered a hallway. Conversely, a large, expansive foyer that is proportionally similar to other living areas within the building may be classified as living space. Architectural design and finishes play a crucial role. A foyer with high-end finishes, decorative lighting, artwork, and other aesthetic enhancements suggests that it is intended to be more than just a passageway. Such features elevate the space and make it more akin to a living area. The presence of windows and natural light can also influence the classification. Foyers with ample natural light and views are generally perceived as more inviting and livable than those that are dark and enclosed. Furthermore, consider the integration of the foyer with other living spaces. If the foyer seamlessly flows into a living room, dining room, or other common area, it may be considered an extension of those spaces and classified accordingly. The presence of doorways or other physical barriers that separate the foyer from other areas can indicate that it is intended to be a distinct and separate space. Local building codes and interpretations can vary significantly. Some jurisdictions may have specific definitions for foyers or other similar spaces that dictate how they should be classified for electrical code purposes. It is essential to consult with local building officials or electrical inspectors to obtain guidance on the proper classification in a particular area. When applying National Electrical Code Section 210.52, which governs the placement of receptacles in dwelling units, the classification of a foyer as living space or a hallway has significant implications. If the foyer is classified as living space, it must meet the receptacle spacing requirements for living rooms, bedrooms, and similar areas. This typically means that receptacles must be installed so that no point along the wall line is more than 6 feet, or 1.8 meters, from a receptacle outlet. In contrast, if the foyer is classified as a hallway, the receptacle spacing requirements may be less stringent. While receptacles may still be required for convenience and safety, the specific spacing requirements for living spaces may not apply. It's also important to consider any specific requirements for foyers or hallways that may be outlined in local building codes or amendments to the National Electrical Code. Some jurisdictions may have additional regulations regarding the placement of receptacles, lighting, or other electrical equipment in these types of spaces. For example, there may be requirements for emergency lighting or exit signs in foyers that serve as primary entrances or exits. In addition to receptacle spacing, the National Electrical Code also addresses other aspects of electrical installations in dwelling units, such as the type of wiring methods permitted, the sizing of conductors and overcurrent protection devices, and the grounding and bonding requirements. These requirements are designed to ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical system and to protect occupants from electrical hazards. When planning an electrical installation in a foyer, it is essential to consider all applicable requirements of the National Electrical Code and local building codes. This includes not only the receptacle spacing requirements but also the requirements for wiring methods, overcurrent protection, grounding, and bonding. It is also important to ensure that the electrical installation is performed by a qualified and licensed electrician who is familiar with the applicable codes and regulations. In some cases, it may be necessary to obtain permits and inspections from the local building department to ensure that the electrical installation complies with all applicable requirements. Failure to comply with these requirements can result in fines, penalties, or even the removal of the electrical installation. Ultimately, the determination of whether a foyer is considered living space or a hallway for National Electrical Code purposes is a matter of interpretation that depends on the specific characteristics of the space and the applicable codes and regulations. By carefully considering the factors outlined above and consulting with qualified professionals, it is possible to make an informed decision that ensures compliance with electrical safety standards and provides for the convenient and safe use of electrical power in the foyer. Remember that the primary goal of the National Electrical Code is to protect people and property from electrical hazards. By adhering to the requirements of the code and seeking expert advice when needed, it is possible to create electrical installations that are both safe and functional. Proper planning, design, and installation are essential for ensuring the long-term safety and reliability of electrical systems in all types of buildings, including residential, commercial, and industrial structures. When considering the architectural features of a foyer, examine elements such as ceiling height, lighting design, and the presence of decorative moldings or trim. High ceilings can create a sense of spaciousness and grandeur, while well-designed lighting can enhance the ambience of the space. Decorative moldings or trim can add visual interest and character. These architectural features can contribute to the perception of the foyer as a living space rather than just a passageway. The materials used in the foyer's construction and finishes can also influence its classification. High-quality materials such as hardwood flooring, marble countertops, and custom cabinetry can elevate the space and make it feel more like a living area. Conversely, inexpensive materials such as vinyl flooring and laminate countertops can detract from the overall impression and make the foyer feel more like a utilitarian space. The presence of furniture and accessories can also play a role in determining whether a foyer is considered living space or a hallway. A foyer that is furnished with comfortable seating, decorative tables, and artwork is more likely to be perceived as a living space. On the other hand, a foyer that is sparsely furnished with only a coat rack and a small table may be considered a hallway. The use of color and texture in the foyer's design can also impact its classification. Warm colors and soft textures can create a welcoming and inviting atmosphere, while cool colors and hard textures can make the space feel more sterile and impersonal. Consider the overall flow and circulation patterns within the building. A foyer that serves as a central hub connecting multiple living areas may be more likely to be considered living space. A foyer that is simply a narrow corridor leading to a single entrance may be classified as a hallway. The presence of doors or other barriers can also affect the classification. A foyer that is open to other living areas without any doors or barriers may be considered an extension of those spaces. A foyer that is separated from other areas by doors or walls may be considered a distinct and separate space. Also consider the function of the foyer in relation to the building's overall design and purpose. A foyer in a grand hotel or luxury apartment building may be intended to serve as a formal reception area and gathering space for guests. A foyer in a small office building may be primarily intended as a passageway for employees and visitors. The National Electrical Code provides general guidelines for electrical installations, but local building codes may have specific requirements or amendments that apply to foyers or other similar spaces. It is important to consult with local building officials or electrical inspectors to obtain guidance on the proper classification and electrical requirements in a particular jurisdiction. The interpretation of terms like living space and hallway can be subjective, and there may be some grey areas where the classification is not clear-cut. In these cases, it is best to err on the side of caution and treat the foyer as living space to ensure compliance with the National Electrical Code and local building codes. In addition to receptacle spacing requirements, the National Electrical Code also addresses other aspects of electrical installations in dwelling units, such as the type of wiring methods permitted, the sizing of conductors and overcurrent protection devices, and the grounding and bonding requirements. These requirements are designed to ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical system and to protect occupants from electrical hazards. When planning an electrical installation in a foyer, it is essential to consider all applicable requirements of the National Electrical Code and local building codes. This includes not only the receptacle spacing requirements but also the requirements for wiring methods, overcurrent protection, grounding, and bonding. The electrical installation should be performed by a qualified and licensed electrician who is familiar with the applicable codes and regulations. Permits and inspections may be required from the local building department to ensure that the electrical installation complies with all applicable requirements. Failure to comply with these requirements can result in fines, penalties, or even the removal of the electrical installation. Ultimately, the determination of whether a foyer is considered living space or a hallway for National Electrical Code purposes is a matter of interpretation that depends on the specific characteristics of the space and the applicable codes and regulations. By carefully considering the factors outlined above and consulting with qualified professionals, it is possible to make an informed decision that ensures compliance with electrical safety standards and provides for the convenient and safe use of electrical power in the foyer. The National Electrical Code is a living document that is constantly evolving to reflect new technologies and safety practices. It is important to stay up to date on the latest changes to the code and to consult with qualified professionals to ensure that electrical installations are performed in accordance with the current requirements. The goal of the National Electrical Code is to protect people and property from electrical hazards, and by adhering to the requirements of the code, it is possible to create electrical installations that are both safe and functional. Proper planning, design, and installation are essential for ensuring the long-term safety and reliability of electrical systems in all types of buildings. Therefore, consider the long-term use of the foyer. Will its function change over time? If so, consider future needs when designing the electrical layout. Think about potential changes in furniture arrangement, the addition of appliances, or other factors that could impact the demand for electrical power. Planning for future needs can prevent the need for costly and disruptive electrical upgrades later on. A well-designed electrical system should be flexible enough to accommodate changing needs without compromising safety or functionality. When determining receptacle placement, consider the location of doors, windows, and other obstructions. Receptacles should be placed in accessible locations that are not blocked by furniture or other objects. Avoid placing receptacles behind doors or in areas where they are likely to be damaged or obstructed. Think about the types of electrical devices that are likely to be used in the foyer. If the foyer is used as a home office or study area, it may need additional receptacles for computers, printers, and other electronic equipment. If the foyer is used as an entertainment area, it may need receptacles for televisions, stereos, and gaming consoles. Consider the need for dedicated circuits for high-power appliances such as space heaters or air conditioners. Dedicated circuits can prevent overloading and ensure that these appliances operate safely and efficiently. Install ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, protection in areas where there is a risk of electric shock, such as near sinks or other water sources. Ground fault circuit interrupters can detect ground faults and quickly shut off the power to prevent electrical shocks. Consider the use of arc fault circuit interrupter, or PSI protection in bedrooms and other areas where there is a risk of fire. Arc fault circuit interrupters can detect arcing faults in electrical wiring and shut off the power to prevent fires. Label all circuits and receptacles clearly to make it easy to identify and troubleshoot electrical problems. Clear labeling can also help prevent accidental overloading or misuse of electrical circuits. Use high-quality electrical materials and components that are designed to meet or exceed industry standards. Quality materials can help ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical system. Inspect the electrical system regularly for signs of damage or wear. Replace any damaged or worn components promptly to prevent electrical hazards. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified and licensed electrician to perform electrical work. Working with electricity can be dangerous, and it is important to take precautions to prevent electrical shocks or fires. Obtain all necessary permits and inspections from the local building department before starting any electrical work. Permits and inspections can help ensure that the electrical work complies with all applicable codes and regulations. Keep a copy of the electrical plans and specifications on file for future reference. These documents can be helpful for troubleshooting electrical problems or planning future electrical upgrades. Follow all manufacturers' instructions when installing electrical equipment or appliances. A proper installation can void warranties and create safety hazards. Educate occupants about electrical safety and how to use electrical equipment safely. Electrical safety education can help prevent electrical shocks, fires, and other electrical hazards. By considering these factors and following these guidelines, you can design an electrical system for a foyer that is safe, functional, and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. Remember that electrical safety is paramount, and it is important to take precautions to prevent electrical hazards.